Cool.
Better in here.
Thank you.
Better.
Yes.
No, Sally wanted, when she got here, she said, let's spend all the time outside. Especially right out front. right in the garden. Okay, this is probably something. Can we give it 1 minute? I'll do my commercial timeout while we're waiting. Somehow I spilled water. Actually, that feels good. So my name is Michael. I serve as the director of the Bull Run Mountains Conservancy. We've never met, I don't think. Have we met?
My husband's Henry Bruno at Kinloch.
Okay, so that's it. Put two and two together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm Michael. I serve as the director of the Conservancy. We're actually celebrating our 30th year. Oh, go figure. Wow. So get out your checkbooks. Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Like you hit all those? Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, and this is my 25th. Like it's our 25th summer camp program this summer. It's our 25th Halloween safari. Everything's 25. Go figure. Time flies. Very fast. I mean, Roost on the loose. I'm like still like we're going back in time. But yeah, so it's great, you know, that you can come out here. The speaker series is one element of many things that we do. So we do a lot of programs at Leopold's Preserve, or we do programs on other properties. If you become a member, you do get invited to our town and country nature walks, such as High Acre Farm we just did, which is just that way on the mountain. It's actually where the Western Ridge, the terminus of it is. We went to Gelmont and looked at the great blue herons, which was fantastic. We went to Catlet and we looked at bluebells, which was fantastic. And then we went to Selby and walked around Selby Farm, which is the Maples just to the west. Yeah, and that's gorgeous. And then, you know, so who knows, you know, where we'll go in the fall. We kind of have places sort of set up, but we haven't quite finalized anything yet. And in the summer, we're not doing it because no one wants to go out, which is why everybody's inside. Come on in, you're fine. Have a seat. It's nice to have you here. And so, yeah, that's one element. And you can see the black plastic. So we also go to homeowners association with the town and country, and any of the town and country programs for that matter. If you want to solarize 16 square feet of your lawn, we give you a 4x4. And they can then get a native seed mix and drop it on your what used to be your grass and no longer is. Just to get people thinking about our native plants, which then leads to actually pollinators and insects and all the good stuff. And so they start with that little thing, and then all of a sudden they're planting black cherries, and they got oak going, and they got a red bud, and put dogwood, and all of a sudden they start thinking, we're just putting in things that animals and insects are going to use, and then all of a sudden they're looking online, which tree hosts the most caterpillars, and things like that. Oh wait, a mulberry. Yeah, a lot of those things started getting eliminated from yards because, they drop what? Berries. Oh, I stepped on the berry. Oh no, I'm gonna get my tile dirty because we stepped on the berries. Yeah, and you didn't. There's things called hoses. You can hose it up. But yeah, so that kind of leads to Sally being here with us today to a degree. Sally, I don't know, we met way back when. Right in the beginning, pretty much. And so it was probably, I don't know, somehow I ended up at the, I ended up at the keynote speaker.
I think that was the year I became president. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, then you picked a bad keynote speaker. I don't know what you're thinking, choosing me.
I picked you.
But you didn't pick me, that's probably right. See, you knew better by then, so we must have met before that.
So that's when I met you, though.
Well, ironically, I basically summarized what Gary had done and what I worked with him doing and showed all that. And so, yeah, it goes way back. But Sally is just, like, how long were you the president of campaign?
Just 9 years.
Just nice. It seemed like longer, but
And now Nancy's been there for 12.
For
We got a
12.
new president coming
Yeah.
up, so.
okay. And so, and does so much, but I'll let her describe that. And but it's been wonderful. You were a keynote speaker at our fundraising event.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And Flora came out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, she's wonderful. We are going to be inside today, but I would totally encourage you. I'm sure probably most of you do, but if you don't, supporting the Native Plant Society. They have different chapters. Sally's been mainly the Piedmont chapter for all these years, and so just a wonderful organization. And if you like to not walk, they lead great walks.
We have a walk every month, second Saturday of the month.
And
Sometimes morning, sometimes afternoon, depending on the time of year and where we're going.
And with plant people, you get from the parking lot to here. And it
Yeah.
only takes 2 hours. So
We call them two. We say they're going to be 2 hours, and we're never
2
back.
hours to get out of the parking lot.
Yeah, we're
So-
never back. We
Never
were back
back.
in 2 hours last time,
Yeah.
and it was kind of like, what happened?
What happened? All right, but I'll turn it over to Sally.
My other hat is that I'm a member of the Flora of Virginia board, and that's why I added the Flora app to this presentation. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to show it on the screen. It didn't work out to hook up all the wires just right, but I will at least pull it up and pass it around so that you all can see a little bit. The Flora of Virginia came out, the book, the 7-pound doorstop, came out in 2012. And I don't know if Michael has a copy, if he just wants to lift it and show you what it's like. But we immediately decided that was too hard to carry in the field. And people were just starting to do a lot of stuff with the electronics. And there was a company that was mostly out west called High Country Apps. And we worked with them, and we put the entire book, plus range maps, plus a pop-up glossary, plus all kinds of stuff on something that you can carry around in your pocket. So, easy. And it includes every native and naturalized plant in the state, and it's much easier to update than this. You can't update
It's
this without
fanny
taking
pack
your
size.
pencil.
That's what I have.
Yeah. So the app came out in 2017, and it's vastly updated also, and it's been updated several times. And when you get the app, you get all the updates with it. So it is a $20 app, but it's worth every penny of it. Not to have to get.
You have to keep paying
Not to have
now?
to get. No,
You
you
pay
don't.
20
No,
and
you
you're
pay
done.
once
Okay.
and you're done. Yeah. So you get tennis elbow with it. It's a good book, but. So what I'm going to do today is talk about plant identification, and it's going to be kind of general. I'm going to start out with this little PowerPoint that I do for the master naturalists on how to use Newcombs. And I have a Newcombs here if anybody wants to try to follow along. What I did was tab it so that the main pages you need to use to get started or have little tabs on them. So if anybody wants to take a look at that and pass it around while I do this. Now the program that I did, because I do it in the spring, is for a common blue violet, which you can't find a common blue violet blooming right at this moment. So I brought other plants, and we'll look at some of those and talk about how you would identify them. But I want you to get the gist of how the book works. So Lawrence Newcomb was colorblind, and so he gave up on things like Peterson's, where you had to do it by the flower color, and he did it by the structure and the shape of things instead. And so he made up this system, and this system actually in some ways has been copied. I've got one other guidebook here I'll pass around. This is the Flora of the Wildflowers of the Atlantic Southeast. It covers a much bigger area. It's kind of a combination of flower color and this kind of stuff together. So I don't use it very much because I have the Flora. So it's not as complete as the Flora, and neither is Newcomb's, and Newcomb's is very old and out of date. But it's still a good way to start learning your plants. Just when you think you've got it, you might want to go online and look it up and see if that's what they're still calling it, and see what other, make sure you got it right, all those kind of things. So to use Newcomb's, the first thing you do is you're going to find a 3-digit number, and you're going to do that using a locator key, and then as you read down, once you get your plant number, you'll go to that plant number and you'll read down, and there will be some other questions, sort of like a dichotomous key where it'll say yellow flowers or white flowers, compound leaves or single leaves. So, let's see where I am here. So, like I said, the flower I used was a common blue violet. And on a common blue violet, the first thing to do is really observe your plant carefully. So here are some common blue violets. You can see there's one of those color morphs that's called a Confederate violet. You've got leaves and a flower stalk all coming out of the ground at the base. So this plant has no true stem. A plant with a stem would be something like this, where you have leaves on the stem, separate leaves on the stem. Whereas with the violet, they're all just coming out of the base at the ground. So that's an important characteristic. The size and shape of the leaves, especially the shape. The fact that this is an irregular flower, okay? So regular and irregular flowers is a whole nother thing to learn about plants. A flower like this, that's not really, well, the regular flowers I have are too small to see, so there's not much blooming right now, but we'll do our best. Anyway, so you've got an irregular flower. A regular flower is more like a starfish with the petals coming out, evenly all the way around.
Isn't that yellow one the irregular flower that you have in your bucket?
Well, it's a little bit, in Newcombs it might be, because you don't want to look too hard when you're using Newcombs. You want to just, but this is actually in the aster family. So what you actually have is a disc that's made up of a whole bunch of tiny little flowers, and then you have ray flowers, and each one of these is actually a flower with its petals fused into this ray. So that's actually a whole head of flowers. So that's the aster family. That's a whole nother thing to learn about. But a regular flower would kind of look like that, basically. So then, let me get to the next. So the first part of Newcomb's, the list, this is the flower type. You'll pick the flower type. And you can see, I put a square around irregular flowers because that's what we have, but then you have flowers with 2 regular parts, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and flower parts indistinguishable for something like, ragweed, where you almost can't see the individual flowers. So these are all regular flowers. So it's irregular, and then all the regular flowers, and then the kind of weird ones. So these are considered regular, because even though they're a tube with petals coming out of it, there's 5 fused petals on that tube. And so if you look at it head on, it's pretty much round. This is very irregular. This is very irregular. This is an obedient plant. And you'll see that the petals are divided into this upper petal and then some lower petals, and they make 2 lips, and the mint family is also like that. So, and then here's the spring beauty, nice and regular, 5 petals sticking out in the circle, and they've got some other examples up here. So with the violet, you've got irregular flowers, so your first number of your 3 numbers is a 1. And then you would go to the plant type, okay? So we've got 4 different wildflower types based on the leaf structure, and then you've got shrubs and vines. So this is basal leaves only, and that's what you've got with this violet. You've got alternate leaves, which is what you've got with this kind of violet. This is a cream colored violet. You've got leaves coming off an upright stem. And then you have opposite, plants that have opposite leaves, like this milkweed. 2 leaves right across from each other on the stem in each place. And then whorled is when you have more than 2 leaves at a node. So if you had another 3 or 4 leaves there, you'd have a whorled leaf. This is also an alternate leaf. You can see the leaves are attached, not opposite each other, but there's a little space between where each one is attached. So So that gives you, so the violet is basic leaves only, so that gives you the number 2. So now you got a 1 and a 2. And then it asks you about the shape of the leaves. And they've got this chart in the book so you can pick out what kind of leaf you have. And a violet is just one solid leaf. It's got teeth on the edge, but it's not lobed. And just as a technical thing, the 2 heart-shaped pieces at the bottom are sort of like lobes, but they don't count them as lobes. They only count things out at the end here as lobes. So this is an entire leaf, no lobes. This is a lobed leaf, and then this is a divided leaf. So that's all one leaf, and it's got different pieces of tissue, and there's stem tissue showing in between them. So you can see divided leaves here too. This one's a little iffy to me. Sometimes I disagree with Newcomb's, but you just have to get used to whatever book you use. You just get used to that system and you know what they call it. So usually, technically in botany, if you have any leaf tissue touching the stem there, then it's really not all the way divided. But you know, he made it up this way, so we'll go with that. So in the violet, our leaves are toothed, but they're not divided. So he put toothed and lobed together too to avoid some of the complications of that. And then this is a violet leaf, so it's toothed. It's not lobed like this one is, but it is toothed. So toothed or lobed is a 3, so now you've got a 1, 2, and a 3. So then you would go to the page that's called the locator key, and you have your group number, your 1, 2, 3. You look down the left-hand side till you come to that. So irregular flowers, basal leaves, toothed leaves, 1, 2, 3. And the page number that you'll find those plants on over here. So then you've got this question, white or yellow flowers, or blue, violet, or purple flowers. And of course, we're going to take the second. So then we go to page 30. And on page 30, you would find the common blue violet, which is no longer called yellow papillinaceae. It's for Viola sorority now. Because this book, even though they put it out with a new cover, was never updated at all for the last about 30 years. So, and they keep changing names, so whatever. But anyway, so common blue violet, and then it gives you a little more information about it, and you can find a picture of it and sort of try to match it up with what you got. But these are all stemless blue violets. So violets, that's the category, the first major category division in them is the stemless and stem violets. So you got all your different stemless violets here.
I'm glad you picked violets. I was trying to learn them this spring and found out there are 40 different kinds of violets in this area.
And there's a guy that's been doing research for a long time on them, so don't even think that they're finished yet.
That
He's
was
writing what they
I
already have.
totally gave up.
Yeah. So, okay, so I think that's it. What's next? Just a little bit more about violets, but that's really all I'm going to show with that. So I thought what we do next, since you brought up this flower, I'll pass it around first. And I told you about the asters, and I'm going to pass around a little magnifying glass with it, and you can look and see in the center. You'll see a bunch of stamens sticking out. It'll be hard to really see exactly what you're looking at. And a lot of times these ray flowers around the edge, the disc flowers usually form the seeds. The ray flowers around the edge are really to attract pollinators. So they're colorful and it gives them a place to sit. And if you go on some place like Xerxes and watch things nectar on any flower really that's got a compact head of flowers, you'll see them like putting their proboscis in each one of those middle flowers. So the disc flowers are actually regular flowers. They're a little tube and the parts stick out, and there's a whole bunch of them compacted together in the center. And then the ray flowers are either sterile or occasionally they have a female part down at the bottom. So if you want to take a good look at an aster flower, go around where somebody's growing one of those great big sunflowers in their garden And every sunflower seed that you see sitting on that thing used to be a disc flower in the center, and all the rays will be gone by that time. But that's you know, the biggest and easiest to see of the aster flowers. But there's hundreds of different asters, and they can be a real challenge, especially the little white doodads. I actually had one of those in here. I do. I have these, let's see. These are their rigirons, and then you can see that the little disc flowers are yellow, and then the ray flowers are the white ones. And in the group Erigeron, the fleabanes, they're very thin petals like that. They're very tiny little, or petals, ray flowers. I should stick to the right terminology. But so that's another one you can take a look at.
So this is a fleabane, that's how I know it.
Yeah, fleabane. Mm-hmm. And this particular one is the there's the annual fleabane that comes up in fields everywhere, and then there's this one that follows it.
So,
Yeah, strigosus. Yeah, it's a daisy fleabane, and it's distinguished by having a little narrower leaves, but also it's got hairs that kind of point up on the stem, so it's the strigos that describes that kind of stiff hair coming up on the stem. And so those are alternate leaves, right, on those plants, and head of flowers. This is another one that's got a head of flowers. This is in the mint family. So if you found this flower, one of the first things to notice would be the square stem. If you roll that in your fingers, it's very squared off, very angular. So a few mints are less angular, and there's some things like some of the verbenas and some of the related plants that can be a little bit square. They also have opposite leaves. So mints, square stem, opposite leaves, an irregular flower, and they're in a head. And so each one of these is one of the flowers.
so each little disc flower is putting that ray off.
Well, this is not raised it. This is actually one single flower.
Okay.
Perfect flower with male and female parts in
Okay.
it. But they are in head, and they're usually in kind of a whorled head like that.
This is the
Sometimes-
Monardi?
Yeah, this is the bee balm, the red bee balm. And some species in this group will have a circle of flowers like that around each node, but these are usually just right at the top.
Is this from your yard?
Yeah. It's kind of a horticultural one, I think, but I don't know if it's a real honest to God bee balm.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the little guys in the middle
Yeah.
are all the flowers.
Yeah,
And
they're
these
all
are the,
flowers.
where you say ray.
They're ray flowers, and you can pull one off if you can try to look at it, but,
That's okay.
but there might be a little, you can see how it's got a little attachment down there.
So
And
that's
then-
also considered an individual flower?
Yeah,
So
Each petal, which is not really a petal.
yeah.
Thank you.
In fact, there's 5 petals and they're fused together to make that one. And when you look at the little veins in it, you can kind of see that.
Are there flowers too that where this middle part, where the whole thing is the flower and the middle part's just like one piece and not a bunch of little flowers?
Other species there are, but not,
They're always
never
gonna
in
be-
the they call them composites because they have
The little
a
guys.
bunch of flowers, both kinds. Now, there are some composites that only have disc flowers, no fancy petals around the edge.
Oh, okay.
And then there's some that are all ray flowers, like a dandelion is all ray flowers. There's no disc flowers in the center of that. It's still a composite, so there are those couple of variations on it. So here's one more thing that's blooming right now. You'll see this along the roadsides everywhere. And it's a Sambucus, or black elderberry.
Oh, thank you.
And this is actually in the carrot or parsley family. It's got opposite leaves and they're divided. These are divided leaves. Now, how do you know that that's a divided leaf and not with leaflets or why are these not leaves? Does anybody know? There's no bud, nothing will ever grow out of there. Where these are attached, there are little tiny buds in there, and they can grow into little side branches on things. And all the members of the carrot family have an umbel as their arrangement of the flower head. They're little tiny regular white flowers. I'm gonna pass that around too, and you see that there are little 5-petaled white flowers all through the middle of it. There's another leaf if you want, anybody wants that. Yeah, if anybody wants another magnet, I'll pass that one around. And then I got one more here. So this, some of you all will recognize this as the trumpet honeysuckle. And it's got opposite leaves on the stem. They're simple, they're not toothed or lobed, they're just plain simple leaves. This end leaf, this is kind of characteristic of it, that this end leaf can be fused together like a cup. And then it's considered a regular flower, because even though it's a tube, if you look at it at the end, it's got 5 little lobes that are, sort of all sticking out evenly around the top of it. So, sorry about all the water, but.
What kind of a flower is this? What kind of a flower?
This is a Monarda,
It is.
Monarda given, I guess, the E-balm.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know, sometimes they do. And if you look at there are some other Monardas that if you look at them, there's more flowers in the axils, but this one always seems to be only on the top. That's a cool stem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here, you want your piece?
Sure. Did you want?
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Okay. So, and then, here's one other, and this is getting kind of into the weeds. I don't know if you all know this one, but it's Enchanter's Nightshade, and these little seeds at the end will turn into little Velcro balls, and they'll be all over your socks.
Your dogs.
Yeah, and all over your dogs, yeah. So, but again, it's got simple opposite leaves. The flowers are in an inflorescence. Inflorescence is a term for any group of flowers, or even you can even say solitary. A solitary is often included as a type of inflorescence, where you just have one flower on a stem. But that's really the first step, always, is to really take a good, careful look at your plant. I'm gonna skip that, and that's pretty sorry looking, too bad. I brought a couple of ferns, because they're so different. And the other thing about Newcombs is it's got wildflowers, it's got a couple of showy shrubs and vines. The Flora has all woody plants too. Most of the wildflower books don't. And it has all the ferns. So I brought 2 completely different looking ferns. So this is Christmas fern, which all y'all probably know. And then this is a wood fern, and it's intermediate wood fern. And so the way you would identify ferns usually is by how cut they are. So this is pinnate, once pinnate. So you have a stalk, and you have your pinnae. These are called pinnae off to the sides. This one is divided that time. It's divided another time, and then it's almost divided a third time if you look at each one of those little characters. So that's a very important character for a fern. That's one of the first things usually in a book. And when they're not quite all the way divided, that's called pinnatifid. So it's twice pinnate, pinnatifid, and this one's just plain pinnate. The other interesting thing to me about ferns is where they hold their spores. So they reproduce by spores, and the spores are often on the back of the leaves as little round dots, Sometimes they're on the back of the leaves as kind of a long skinny, you wouldn't call it a dot, just little, they're more like lines. And they're covered by a little piece of tissue that's called an indusium. The Christmas fern has spores on the back of the leaves, but only at the top of the stalk. So it puts out a couple of leaves in the spring, and then it puts out these ones where the spores, you can see that brown on the back of there. So in this one, I'm not sure was old enough to, yeah, I think there's some dots on there, but they're hard to see. But it just has more like little round dots.
Yeah, there's dots on
Another little, another common fern is related to that one. It's called the marginal wood fern, and it's got the little spore dots around the edges of the little, it's only twice divided instead of 2.5 times like that one. And it's got the spore dots are right around the edge of the little pinnae. So you can recognize that one pretty easily.
So which is the more common of those when you're walking in the woods? Because I see the wood ferns a lot.
Yeah, well, there's actually quite a few other wood ferns besides those.
Like, how do you tell that
Yeah,
one
I'm
from a
trying to
cinnamon
learn.
fern?
Marginal wood fern is evergreen, so you actually see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, see that one?
Well, this one is too, but I got that one in West
I've
Virginia.
got marginal interrupted at my house, so I've learned those two. But I'm wondering how to tell. We had a hard time taking them out. We really struggled.
Yeah, it is a struggle, and
If it wasn't ever
There are-
good, if it hadn't waited, and we saw clearly one was ever good.
you have to get it at the right time of year to find the spores. Like the late summer fronds on autumn that come out won't have spores on them. If I can put a fresh set of fronds out late in the summer, they won't have spores.
So type them early in the spring.
Yes, I would say, late spring, early summer, right around now is the best time. And you really have to use a magnifier and look at those little spore dots carefully if it starts asking you about the covering and stuff like that. But the first thing is to notice how, whether it's once pinnae, twice pinnae, 2.5 times pinnae. So that's the first thing. And then a lot of times the hairs and chaff at the base of the stem is something important to look at. And just, a lot of books also give you the overall shape of the frond, so this would be kind of lanceolate. If you just sort of ignored that and thought of it as a single leaf, it would have that shape. The other one would have more of a shape like that. And then like do you know New York fern?
Yes.
Okay, so New York fern starts out and then comes back down, so it has a shape that's, pointed at both ends. And then, trying to think of that other one that's the hay-scented fern that looks so much like New York, but it does not go back down to the fine little fronds that are pinning at the bottom. It just comes down and then it's kind of blunt across the bottom. So that overall shape of the frond is important, then how pinnate it is, and then the spores.
Are ferns protected in Virginia?
Not particularly.
I want to look at this again.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I wanted to
Can we just say all plants are protected?
Right.
well, they should be, but.
They should be. All plants are protected.
Yes, we're gonna protect as many as we can. So the
Unless they're
Flora of
invasive.
Virginia app has this icon that's a little spring beauty. That's our it's the same plant that's on the front of the book. So I'll just bring it up and show you the homepage looks like that. It's got all these different tabs on it. So the first one is browse plants, and that gives you a list of 3,500 plants. so you want to learn how to narrow that down a little bit. So it has dichotomous keys like in the book, but it also has a key that we developed for this app called a graphic key. And the graphic key will come up. You can go through a little tutorial to pick what kind of plant you have. Okay, so you have to go into your plant groups, and then once you pick one, so let's pick Let's pick woody plants, let's real quick kind of try to run through the Sambucus. So woody plants, then it'll have broadleaf woody plants and needle-leaf woody plants.
Which app is this?
This is Flora of Virginia.
Flora of Virginia, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's a $20 app, but it's updated for the rest of your life, unless you change what kind of fund you have. And then I think you might have to start over, because they're different for iPhones and Android phones. So then you have broadleaf plants or needle-leaf plants, so we'll take broadleaf plants, and it gives you this.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, that's nice.
It's really good.
Yeah, so then it gives you all these choices based on, and you don't, unlike a dichotomous key, you've got two leads, and you have to pick one of them, and that takes you to your next lead. So you have to make a choice. You always have to make a choice. And sometimes if you don't have a flower, or you don't have whatever part it is, it's really hard to make that choice. Now you can just randomly pick one, and make a note of it and follow that. And then if it doesn't work, you can come back and try the next one. But it gets long and tedious when you do that. This, with the graphic key, you can just answer the questions that you know. Now, I try to do this from memory a lot, and I'll find that I can't remember some key things, and I'll end up with 100 plants to look through. The whole thing is, when you choose plants, there's a number up here, and you're watching that number the whole time you're trying to make that number go down. Okay, the fewer plants you have to try to look through. So if we were gonna do that Sambucus, it's everywhere, so I'm not gonna bother to put a location in. These things, these environmental questions of moist soil, dry soil, whatever, it's most of these plants, unless it's unless it's an aquatic plant or something, that doesn't really help you very much. So I often skip that and how much sun it gets. How much sun something gets is gonna vary. If you're out in spring woods, you'll say, oh, it's sunny out here. If you were there in the summer, you would say, oh gosh, it's really shady here. So, it changes during the life of the plant. The next question is native and non-native. The reason that's on there, if you don't know the plant, you don't know if it's a native or not, right? The reason that's on there is because there's a backwards way to use this to pick out plants for your garden. So you want to pick out a native plant, you want it to be a shrub, you want it to have such and such color flowers, or you want it to be such and such a size. You can put that information in and it'll give you a list of shrubs that you might like to have. So that's kind of a nice way to use it, but we're gonna skip native. Let's see, where are we? So is it evergreen? Well, is an elderberry evergreen? No. What kind of fruit does it have? It's got a berry, and it's blue.
It's a berry.
I'm guessing.
Is it the one next to the acorn? The berry?
Let's see
Is that
where
berry?
you are.
Fruit type?
Let me make sure I'm in the right place.
Purple and evergreen?
Okay. Evergreen, oh, yeah, okay, bloom time, it's blooming now, so we'll say June or July, we're in June. And then it's a shrub, so you'll click on shrub on the next line. And then, armed with spines, no. Is it evergreen? No. Sorry, I skipped down there.
Wonderful improvement.
Yeah.
By
Yeah, and then as far as that goes, and the other thing you can do with these is if you're not sure, click on it and it'll say fruit type cone, not fruit type drupe or berry.
Oh, that's a nut.
That sounds good. The leaves are opposite. The leaves are compound. Let's see.
Oh, that's because there's like 50.
And then we're gonna look and see and make sure whether these leaves are toothed on the edge. They look pretty solid to me. Maybe there's small teeth on there. So we're gonna say they're toothed. And they toggle on and off, so if you change your mind, just, and then even without the leaf link, we're down to 2, so I'm gonna tell it to show that. And sure enough, there's the Sambucus right on the first one. And then when you tap on that plant, the first thing you get is pictures and a botanical
Can you
drawing.
back up again? You said leaf arrangement was 2. Oh,
Opposite.
opposite, gotcha.
Okay, and then compound,
That's that one?
and then really tooth is the only other thing I did. I sort of put there.
Oh, that's low.
Yeah.
Oh, down here.
Yeah, down
How
there.
do I say forget it?
Just tap it again and it should go off.
Okay,
Okay.
and 2.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Are you down to 2?
you. Yes.
Okay. So then you hit show, and it'll show you the ones that you picked. Okay, so there's your Sambucus. So once you get there, you've got the page with the pictures and all that. Tells you all about the name of the plant, what family it's in, and whether it's native. Then you've got another button here that's the description, and it's a botanical description. There's a ruler on here if you need it. And all these blue words are things that are hyperlinked to the glossary. So if you don't know what something means, you can, and that's really a great improvement. Tells you when it blooms, all about its habitat, where it's found, any comments, other things that might have been called in the past. And then at the bottom, there's your graphic key answers. So if you're trying to learn plants and you want to use this, to pick a plant, for one thing, you just have to practice a lot to identify plants. But pick a plant you know, that you bought in a nursery or somebody told you what it was, or use a seed or something like that and get the name of the plant. And then try to do it. Try to see if you can get your way to it.
Like, see if it doesn't have bloom, forget about it.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like monocot or dicot.
Yeah, I know. It can be really unhelpful
Difficult.
sometimes. So that's why I really encourage you to find something that you sort of know what it is.
This
Either
is
get
cool.
somebody to tell you what it is or whatever. And then work your way through until you know how to get to that. And just do that a few times and you'll learn a lot. So you have those 2 things. And then you have one more button down here that's the range map. So these range maps will also give you information. So if you look at, if you think you found your plant and you're up here and the only dots are way down at the other end of the state, then you might want to try again. Okay. So that's the gist of it. It also has the dichotomous keys, which I won't go into because that's just too much to look at. It has lots of other things like, it's got a whole thing about the natural communities of Virginia that's interesting to explore. So you could find the natural community over in mountains and it would give you a description of that. And there's some lovely photographs. All the chapters from the book are in here. So this whole chapter of Gary Fleming's about the whole chapter about the history of botany is in here, but this whole chapter of Gary's with all the nice photographs of all the different natural area, all the different natural community types, all of that's on your phone. I mean, it's just all on there, plus the range maps, plus, you know, a little bit of tutorial on botanical health and stuff like that. So, if you really want to identify plants, I highly encourage you to look into that.
So Sally, does the app cover just flowers, or does it also
No.
cover grasses?
It has
other...
everything.
Okay.
It has woody
trees
plants.
as well.
It has woody plants, trees, shrubs, vines, sedges, aquatic plants, ferns, all that stuff.
Okay.
It's got them all. So all 3,400 and whatever. So
what about in the winter when there are no leaves? Can it identify things from like twigs?
you can try to use the graphic key on it, but it's really not. That is the one thing I would say that it doesn't have. If you want to do that, I would get a twig key. You can get little books that are twig keys, and there's a botany in winter and stuff like that. And you can try to identify. There's an old one by, I believe the author's name is Harlow, that's just a thin little paperback, but it has a fruit, nut and fruit type key for the hard fruits that'll still be left, like a sweet gumball or an acorn or whatever. And then it's got a twig key that you can go through. the only thing I don't really like about it is that I don't think the pictures are very good. But, you know, you can look up pictures of everything these days. You can just put in images in Google and look up whatever you want to look up and get 1,000 pictures of it. So another thing that some people find helpful, and I used to use it a lot till we got the hyperlink dictionary, and hopefully someday we're gonna actually put some illustrations on the hyperlink dictionary too, but this is an illustrated glossary. So it has pretty nice line drawings of all the different botanical complexities that you need to know. So that's,
It's a glossary of all the terms.
yeah, all the terms, and then there's some things like, there's some things like just a category of leaves where they compare all the leaves and put them together at the end, and flower inflorescent shapes, and they've got these nice kind of, you know, different shapes that you can go by to learn your inflorescences, how your flowers are grouped. So that's always kind of handy to have. I mean, if you're sitting at your computer at home, you can look at it. One thing that we were going to do and haven't done yet, and I don't know whether this will still be in the pipeline or not, is to make a version of the app that would go on your desktop computer. Because wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were originally gonna do that, and then it just got to be too much. You know, when we were trying to finish the book and do all the stuff, it just frankly got to be too much. And then it just went by the wayside because everybody seems to be using mobile devices. And you can put it on an iPad and stuff like that. So I first had it on an iPad and I really liked it because it was a little bit bigger, a little easier to navigate. Does anybody have questions in particular about, what I should tell you is there's a whole series of videos. I think they're on the VNPS website, and I'm pretty sure they're also on the Master Naturalist website for the state, and on the Flora. And we made them several years ago during the pandemic. We were gonna do a series of teaching things where we taught people and had a PowerPoint for them to use, and they would go out and teach people. And of course, with the pandemic, none of that was gonna happen. So we made a series of videos of all of them. And so there's one called A Tour of the Flora that goes over the book. There's one on how to use the app. There's one on basic botany. There's several others. There's like 6 or 7 of these videos. And then just this last year, we remade an app of a presentation of how to use the app. And it's probably on all those places too. I don't think it's on the Master Naturalist site yet, but I know it's on the Flora website. And what we did was we started a program called Flora Ambassadors, and it was the same idea as we originally had, that we were going to teach people how to use it, and then they were going to teach other people. So we did it with the Master Naturalists. We made this video for them about how to use the app in detail. It shows you every button that can be pushed, where it is and what it does. And then part of it's about the natural communities, which were added after their first set of videos. Yeah.
I have a question. So have you guys thought about doing like Cornell's done with Merlin and making it so people can, citizen science, they do find a species and they're not sure because it sounds like it's rare, but should be rare, but what if they're right and it's rare and they found it and the Heritage Program would want to know, can they take a picture and submit it like that? Have you thought about doing an app like that? Like
We've
citizen
actually
science?
thought about adding one of those, software recognition things to it so that you could use it like Seek as well. But I don't know when that will happen. I mean, all this has to be done through fundraising and hiring people to do it because people like me aren't going to be able to do that. But so yeah, we've had a lot of other ideas like that. So, but so the new program with the ambassadors, then we had a lot of people sign up to watch the video, and we showed that, and then we gave them some homework. A lot of them did the homework, and then we had a homework review session. So all of that stuff I think is all on the website where you can see all of it. And then we did field days where we took 6 or 8 people out in the field and, you got them to use the app and say, you know, what they did and why they did it, and so try to get them to do the teaching part of it. And then through doing that, we actually got a lot of suggestions for things to improve the app. You know, like, why doesn't it have a ruler here instead of over here, and why doesn't it have, you know, this or that feature? So that was really good. Like, the pop-up glossary is not in the graphic key. Well, of course it should be. But, you know, when you're the one making it, sometimes you overlook these things, and it was great to have all these suggestions. So, if you ever are using it and you have ideas, be sure to, you know, just go on the Flora website and tell somebody. So, yeah.
So, you said Newcomb's, has a lot of the old names. How do you know, I mean, I got 10 people jumped down my throat and I said, hey, there's a squaw root.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just went down my
that
throat.
kind of stuff, that's a whole
How do you
nother
ever
can of
know,
worms.
you know, how do you know when there's a new name? I still call it that.
Yeah.
I understand. I understand.
I know.
I
I
know.
know.
Is there
It's like
anything-
Oriental bittersweet.
Is the Flora app, has the current
Flora
common names?
app has the current names, but the common names are all over the place
Yeah.
on some things. So they have a common name or two for each entry, but they don't have them all.
Yeah,
Right,
it's a
right.
common
You know,
name.
you could have to use up the whole page listening to common.
Really,
names
like you go to
for some
another
of them.
part of the state or something, they probably have a different
Yeah,
name.
exactly. So it's really kind of hard that way. Now, what you can do is if you look up the botanical name that you got from Newcomb's in the app, it's cross-referenced.
So that's gonna stay the same,
Well, it's gonna take you to the right plant, and the name that you put it in by, if it's changed its name, it's a little cumbersome because you have to look through the list and you're gonna say, but my plant's not there. But it's one of those plants, and it'll only have the new name. But if you go into this part in the descriptions, I'm just gonna pick up the first plant here at random. In the description section, there's a thing called synonymy, and the name should be in this thing. So,
Oh,
so
okay.
if you put Viola papilionacea into here, let's just do it and see how it works. Sorry. No, it's not coming up. It is cross-referenced in the book. And I thought it was pretty much the same in here, but every once in a while they review this one, once in a while. And, so sometimes you're not gonna find it that way, but you can also go online and just look it up online and it'll come.
going with the botanical.
Yeah. So even if you put the old name in, it'll give you it'll give you a bunch of
Oh, that's
choices,
cool.
and you'll be able to figure out, I think, what the new one is. And look it up with that. But, you know, keep in mind that they still are changing all the time. I know,
Yeah.
especially violets. Give up on violets.
I'd have.
So is Newcomb's considered obsolete? Like, if you were new to the hobby,
You know,
would you
it's-
even like bother figuring it out?
You know, it's a $20 book. If I
It's
had
good
my
for
choice,
checking
I'd
it
get the app. But then, if you're really brand new at plants and you really haven't looked at them much, it's a good way to get you to start looking at the details. And you can carry it around with you. Some people do still like that better.
We went on a wildflower walk, like in the spring, and the guy went through the Newcomb's book.
Yeah.
And he was like,
I mean, it works
Now I
good.
know.
It's not gonna put burden just because they changed the name of the plant. It's still gonna work fine.
okay,
Who is Newcomb?
His name is Lawrence Newcomb. He's from New England, and he's long since deceased, and his family has the copyright, I guess, and I don't think they have any intention of updating the book.
I
But,
don't blame them.
That's
well,
interesting
yeah,
that he was.
it's way
colorful.
too
a lot of
far,
work.
it's way too far over the hill right now. But the concept of how to identify the plant still works. And you can always, because there's so many resources anymore, you can always take whatever you find in there and check it out and see what it's called now, or if it's, you know, what family it's in now, or whatever, you know.
Yeah, you're usually gonna still find, like, if you put what you find in Newcomb's into your computer search, you're gonna get whatever They'll recognize the old name.
Yeah,
The one thing is you need a loop, because some of the things you can't
do.
really see.
you do. And the keys, actually, the instructions for the keys in the Flora will tell you that you need a 10x loop. And every once in a while say you need a 20x loop for this one. So, but mostly a 10x loop. Being a plant nerd, I have a dissecting microscope on my dining room table, and I just take things and look at it on that.
Is that better?
It is, because for one thing, you're looking with both
I
eyes,
know,
it's
yeah.
more comfortable. But I
Yeah.
do have to, not wear glasses very much anymore because I got my cataracts fixed. But I wear readers sometimes, and I have to take them on and off
I
the whole
know.
time I'm doing it. So unless it's a book with a little bit bigger print, it can become annoying. But it is, it's a lot of fun. A dissecting scope is a lot of fun for a lot of things. You can look at it, like, even if you just wanna identify the tooth that you got, so you know which disease you're gonna get, you can do that. Like I pulled something off one time and I set it on a piece of white paper. I just thought it was a little tiny scab. And all of a sudden I looked over there and it was crawling.
Oh, no.
And it
With
was
a
that
tick?
small that I wouldn't put it under the,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can be teeny.
yeah, it was not even a pinhead, it was
I
more like
didn't
a
even know.
pinpoint.
I took off
Yeah.
my daughter after
I'm sure
camp.
you do that all the
It
time.
looked like a freckle, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god,
Yeah,
I
and then I've tried to scratch off some freckles too, and that's not good.
Yeah, I know, I freaked out, like, I'm like, she's gonna die tonight because I mean, it was my first kind of tick thing. For some reason, I didn't notice ticks growing up, or maybe we didn't have them, I don't know.
I don't remember them being a problem.
They weren't
Dog
deadly.
ticks.
When
Yeah.
we were little, they weren't all deadly.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just ticks.
Yeah.
I grew up in
I got it.
Ohio, I don't think we had them, I swear, nobody talked about them.
Well, you know, I grew up in Texas, and one time my mother had some work done on part of the house, and then we had ticks for a little bit. For some reason, because she put them all on a pin. Every time she found one, she had this little pin full of ticks. But other than that, I hardly ever remember seeing one, so I don't know why that is. You know, because we were out crashing around, we got chiggers all the time.
Yeah, because my cousins were in North Carolina, they always talked about ticks.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going, I don't know, maybe I'll have to ask, could they have me?
Well, and I spent a lot of time in Canaan Valley in West Virginia, and we never had ticks until about maybe 5 years ago. And now all of a sudden we have ticks. I get a tick every time I go out.
Really?
I think it's because so many people
Weather.
come there from everywhere, and they're bringing their dogs, and they're bringing their cars, and they bring themselves, and somehow or other, it's just like when you get in your car and all of a sudden there's a tick crawling across the dashboard. They're there, you know. So I guess that's how it happened. I mean, the weather has changed a little bit.
Oh gosh, yeah, because they don't get frozen,
Yeah.
you know.
Another question. So I went to a talk by Sir Peter Crane a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and he is now the curator of Bunny Mellon's property. And he said they had 900 species of plants on there, and he mentioned 2 persimmons, and I'm only aware of one. And I said to him, I told him that, I said, I've only ever seen one in these forests, you know, what's the other one look like? And he said it wasn't native. And then I asked him, well, so 100 years from now, how do you anticipate these, I think he has 400 acres with 900 species, not all native. What do you anticipate the impact of this, of maintaining this native and non-native being on the rest of our forest? I mean, we've lost so many species of our trees.
Yeah.
And and I've heard other botanists say it, and it hurts my heart, but they kind of said, get over it.
Well, here's a new one that I found out about this year. So the white walnut or butternut, that's used to be fairly common in our forest, has got a bad canker disease. And when you do see it, it's all, you know, it looks terrible. But at Blandy Farm, at the Arboretum, they were starting to collect butternuts from people wherever they could find them and grow them. And so they were doing some research on them, and it turns out that there's a hybrid with a Chinese walnut, and an American butternut, and it's in the forests everywhere. We went out looking at the Thompson. Turns turns out there's butternuts all over the place up there. I never saw one until a couple of years ago, and then I stopped on the trail one day to talk to somebody, and I looked down and there were butternuts on the ground. Wow, butternut. Well, when we went out with the people from Blandney, we found a lot of small butternuts, and most of them have canker, so they took some samples to try to do genetic testing to see if they're the hybrids or not. But there are some little differences in the way the bark looks and stuff, but I don't know well enough to know. But they're trying to find native butternuts and grow them up, so.
I have
But
one.
here's a new complication to the whole
Is it
thing.
right? Is that just kind of like two different schools of thought, I guess?
Yeah, and I think some people just think, well, you wanna eat trees or don't you? But,
Hurts them and.
yeah, it hurts to think.
I have one butternut, I've been growing it for 20 years, it's struggling, we knew about the canker when we got it. It's not 10, 15 feet tall, it's really struggling. So they are in trouble, but they hybridize, and nature, and that's one of the things about your book, you go out and you try it with oaks, they hybridize too. And so that's a
Especially
naturally
in
will
places
hybridize.
where there's a
So
lot of disturbance in the forest and planted things and stuff.
see what
It's more so.
strengthens them and what survives.
Yeah.
It is really cool, where we had all the wildflowers last year, and there's some parts of it where, I guess it was without the wind, so it's really, really just scorched earth, and the trees themselves are scorched. And I guess some seeds need the fire to even germinate, so we've been kind of watching it to see, well, what's cool, what's new, what
Yeah.
haven't we ever seen before that's just coming up because of the fire.
Yeah,
And
We have a
the
fire
first
in
thing came up
Virginia?
was, huh?
Do we have them in Virginia?
last year we did.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Shenandoah and the Shenandoah
Oh,
Park,
really?
we had a lot of the big ones.
There were a lot of fires,
The first ones
actually,
that
a lot
came
of
up
smaller
over the,
fires, and they were more down south in the
Yeah.
Shenandoah Valley, but there were a lot of fires.
We saw some lady slippers were the first things we saw coming through the scorched earth.
Isn't that great? I was like, yeah, I think fire's gonna be a good
It's
one.
interesting to see what comes up.
I mean, some people think that fire was pretty common here, before settlement.
Sure.
even. But not so much up in this part of the state.
Oh,
Maybe a little bit, but, in the southeastern part of the state, the fire frequency would have been a lot higher
Okay.
than
Why is
in this
that?
part. Hotter, more lightning strikes, different kind of vegetation, so all the pines, I guess, and the grasses and whatnot.
The soil types.
Yeah, so you get places where it's really moist all the time, like Canaan Valley, I don't think you have a fire risk there very much. I mean, you get fires because campers don't
There's
put the
humans,
fires out
yeah.
over there. I mean, it does get a little bit dry anymore. And in fact, the whole place looks like it does because after the logging era, when it was all slash, it caught fire from the railroad trains. And it burned like 3 feet of duff off the entire plateau up there. So it's vastly changed since prehistoric times. But I think most of our landscapes are pretty changed. And people say all the time, well, we've got all these plants from the Midwest and plants that come up in these drier, more open savanna conditions, and that's true. And they could have been there, they've obviously been there a long time. So there's been open conditions off and on, not just, we used to just say, oh, a squirrel could go from one end of the state to the other, right, without getting off a tree. And maybe that wasn't really quite true in the southeast at least. But also it might have varied I'm sure it varied over time. I don't wanna sound like a climate denier when I say that climate changes all the time, but it does.
Right,
You know,
that's true.
Change a little bit all the time. We've had some pretty
The
big
difference
climates.
is you're talking hundreds of thousands of years.
Exactly, exactly.
As opposed to like
Well, I got in an argument with my brother and he said, well, the climate changes all the time. I was like,
Yeah, and it's speaking to Lisa, your point about what he said about just get used to it. That is a dangerous thing because there are certain areas that you probably are going to have to get used to, but that does not mean you should not be fighting for your native plants.
and
In
it
areas
doesn't
that
mean that you
can.
shouldn't be fighting to not be bringing all those diseases
Yeah,
in and all
right.
that
It's-
stuff.
ripping up the mustard grass every time you see
It's
it.
startling because with our common country nature walks and a lot of the conservation easements and properties that we've experienced, all these property owners want to do the right thing and it is a nightmare. legacy in Virginia where the conservation easement is like the majority of their conservation program, because there's not a lot of public land and there's not a lot of money or political to get public land. So it's really, you're talking about, I mean, it's like, you can start low, but it starts to build up and it fills the whole thing in. And so we're going from a time where you could just see through the woods because of the deer problem to now the woods literally just going up and just being a jungle. And with climate change in here, we're getting a Tampa Bay kind of climate that we're experiencing, and that's just adding to the whole
So you
thing.
got the carbon in the atmosphere that probably, at least for a while, gave a boost to the growth of the plants.
And with these
There's that,
non-natives,
too.
they're just
It's
choking.
the
And that's
non-natives is
everything.
the
They're
problem.
just choking the whole thing. And of course, the deer aren't eating them. And so it just exasperates the problem to the point where, like, you know, Japanese barberry, and we were talking about this last week. I mean, I'm finding rabbits, you know, in mature woods, 500 meters in the woods, away from the fields, because the Japanese barberry is so thick that it's like the briar patch in the woods. Well, that's not native, that's not right. You don't, rabbits don't live in the woods.
And, well, and the other thing I think you could do is, like this year, we actually got some pretty good legislation passed to at least label invasive plants in nurseries.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's all. It was huge, but the governor vetoed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
both houses of our government passed 3 or 4 of these kind of things, and they were all vetoed. So, you know, I'm about to redline one of those articles and say, is this democracy? And send it to him, because that's just.
No, you should.
Yes.
Totally,
You know.
it was so disappointing to hear it from Sir Peter Crane. I mean, it was like, you know, hello, Kew Gardens. I mean, he was a curator for Kew Gardens for decades. He
Yeah,
was
but-
brilliant.
But look at the flora, well, we have the pre-Columbian flora, and then we have sort of like, in the historic period, we've got, most of our stuff came from with cattle and farming and stuff like that. And then we started horticulture and we got all the other stuff. But if you go to England and you start to study the history of botany, you've got that way back original flora, and then you've got the Roman flora, and then you've got the Middle Ages flora, and you've got and every time there's things brought in, and it's just totally, it's chaotic compared to here. So,
But we're catching up.
yeah, we're catching. Yeah. So, yeah, the idea of people being able to sell barberry and, you know, people breeding, well, and people being able to breed New Bradford pears that are more cold hardy and sell them, you know, I mean, what?
Or the government using kudzu to control railroad banks that got out of control. Now you can't even kill it with straight up 7 and Roundup.
Really?
Yeah, and then the use of chemicals, that's a whole nother can
Yeah.
of worms, you know, it's just something that
We won one in the plains last week. They were going to, they suggested keeping the sidewalks clean with, the old Roundup that had glyphosate in it. And my little brother happens to have leukemia right now because of
Yes.
glyphosate.
Yeah.
My hand got up so fast, and I tried to keep my tone down and try to keep myself from shouting, but I don't think I did a very good job of it. But they did vote it down, so they're not gonna use it.
Good.
Yeah, it was very distressing.
Yeah.
Cause when I told him that he
Yeah.
had wrong information, he said, but they told me, and I'm like, they lied.
Yes.
They were misinformed. Somebody said the mulberry was native. Did somebody say that?
Well, there is a native mulberry.
There is?
Yeah. Now, the mulberry you mostly see is the white mulberry. And
It's not native, because I read that it was invasive, and my neighbors have one, and I told her that, but I kinda like the tree because the birds like it.
I know.
So, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like,
I know.
I like the tree too.
And the native mulberry is fading out.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and
Okay,
I don't
that's
think
it.
anybody knows why, except yesterday I walked out in my driveway, and how can it be your driveway? You go there every day, at least a couple of times, right? And there's a great big mulberry up there that I had never seen. And I think it might be a red mulberry.
Yeah,
Because it
we
doesn't
may-
have, you know, the leaves on a white mulberry tend to be that weird shape. And these are just heart-shaped. I think I thought it was a tilia for a long time, a basswood. But it's got little red berries all over it now.
Huh.
Really, that's what I saw, was the fruit in the driveway. Dang those birds.
Makes good pies.
Yeah, I can't reach it. I was gonna reach up there and take a closer look at the leaves because there are some differences in the hairs and all
I
that.
got 3 one piece you can borrow.
Yeah, what?
My kids, 3 one piece.
Okay, yeah, that's what I need, cause I even got something long, a long tool and tried to reach up there and I can't reach the first branch cause it's growing out of a bunch of red buds and other stuff. So, and it's only this big around, so I don't think I'm gonna climb it. I could get up on a ladder and I might be able to hook a piece, but it looks like a red mulberry, so I'm curious, I really wanna know if it is or not before I put it down. Cause I cut the other ones down off in my woods a lot, just cause there'd be nothing else if I didn't, there's so many of them. But they have real orangey bark too, and this one doesn't have that, so.
Well, they don't come back when you cut them down, you just want them down and then eventually they probably will.
Yeah, eventually they come back.
Well, you just cut them and then haul them away?
Well, I just throw them in the woods.
Okay.
Just leave them. I mean, they're most of the ones I've cut
Oh,
down.
little.
but, yeah, I leave everything in the woods. I don't take wood out of the wood and leaves out of the woods. In fact, I put the leaves back in where I can, or I have to get rid of them out of the yard. So, just to try to keep it, I have a lot of redback salamanders and stuff like that. I mean, I have an acre of suburban property. It was before they did rearrangement of the entire landscape when they built houses, and they just kind of cut a hole in the woods and put a house. So there's no curb and gutter, and there's no, all the stuff that you get with modern housing development, where they re-landscape the whole thing first and turn it all into hard clay. So there's a lot of, there's native ginseng on the property, there's petty red orchid, there's a lot of great plants that come up. The woods is full of those, black cohosh, the very ones right now. I moved there totally by accident, but I couldn't be happier with where I ended up, so. But it's, I don't really garden, but I go through the woods and take out invasive plants, cause it's a neighborhood, and they're in there. So I have weed-burning bush, pull up a couple hundred of those every year,
Since you do it yourself, you just find little.
Well, yeah, I just find little ones. I mean, I did find some big ones, you do occasionally, but most of the time, as long as I go through there once or twice a year looking for them, I can recognize them now when they're just barely
Just
sprouted,
big, okay.
so.
Just girdle those big ones surreptitiously.
My neighbor's yard is landscaped with wind-burning bush.
Oh, God.
That's very beautiful. Well, there's some other things over there too, but she's got 2 9-year-old twin boys. I don't think she has time to think about that.
Yeah, that would be
They're
bad.
crazy. Anyway, if there's no other questions, I guess, I put brochures about the Native Plant Society and about our plant of the year is, white turtle head. There's a brochure about that, and some brochures about caring for your lawn and your yard.
Question about white tar. I mean, I had it, and I was warned that it spreads. And then I got mad because of,
Which one?
the white turtle head, or maybe it was pink.
Maybe
But
it's-
I mean, is there one that's invasive? I ended up removing it because I wanted something else in there. I mean, I don't hate the plant, it
I
was
don't think
beautiful.
so, but the white one is really more of a wetland plant.
Oh,
so
is it?
that
Okay, maybe
probably
that's why maybe I
wasn't that.
can't remember. That was 15 years
Yeah,
ago.
and they do have a lot of the pink when it's arboretum, and I don't know if they need to have that much or whether it just took over the little bit, but anyway.
Thank
So,
you so
thank
much.
you.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
come on a walk with the Native Plant Society sometime if you wanna learn more, we have 7 counties, so we go all kinds of places to take walks, and we do it all year round, and so you can learn plants just from kind of hanging around and seeing them, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.